Let's bring this meeting to order. Welcome. My name is Tony Thurman, and it's an honor to chair the subcommittee. It's an honor for us to have this conversation today in Health and Human Services on all that we can do to support our friends and family who are served in the developmental disability community. We anticipate a very robust discussion today, and we look forward to the conversation. I'd certainly like to start by saying thank you to all of the providers and for all of those who do the hard work. I can tell you for a fact that the issues that we'll discuss today are very important to all of the members of the committee. And I'm honored to chair a committee that has members who have deep concern for how we serve those in the developmental centers and how we support our providers who are serving the folks in the community. I'm also interested for many reasons, including my own personal experiences, having served for many years as a social worker in the regional center community at both Golden Gate Regional Center and at the Regional Center of the East Bay, and having worked in supported living as an overnight attendant in supported living. It's important to me that we do all that we can to make sure that those who are served in our regional center community have the ability to have what we all want, the ability to live independently, to live in the community, and to have a robust, healthy life around employment, around life, around living. And so we look forward to the conversation today. I have one request, and we want to accommodate every interest that is here today, but I have to ask that everyone keep their comments brief. We know it's very important, and we thank you all who've come from very far away today, but it's very important so that we can actually get to the work of the conversation about what to do around a rate increase and what changes to make. We've got to be able to get to the work. And in that respect, I ask everyone if you keep your comments very brief. So it's not a surprise when we get to public comment, I'll be asking that each person who speaks will have up to 1 minute to speak. You don't have to take the whole minute. If you can do it in less, we invite you to. We appreciate your support, but we know that you want your voice to be heard, and so we ask that you keep it brief so that we can get to the work of the actual policy issues that are at hand. So thank you for coming. We look forward to the conversation and to the work going forward. With that, I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Assemblymember Thurmond.
Present.
Assemblymember Bonta. Assemblymember Chu.
Here.
Assemblymember Grove. And Assemblymember Jones. Here. Okay.
Thank you. We will start with a conversation, an overview, and we're honored to have our department director, Mr. Santee Rogers, and ask him to come forward. I'm going to ask that so that we keep things moving, we'll also invite up the folks from our second panel who will be talking about state developmental centers to come up, Mr. John Doyle, Dion Aroner, and Tony Anderson. I know we have representatives from the LAO's office in finance. If you want to be close by for when we're ready for your presentation and questions from the committee. Thank you very much. Director Rogers, whenever you're ready, we're ready for your remarks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thurman and members. I'm Santee Rogers. I'm Director of the Department of Developmental Services. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an extreme pleasure to be here in Mr. Unruh's room. When you talk about the Lanterman Developmental Disability Services Act, He had a major role. For all of those in the room who know this history pretty well. For those who don't, I always start with giving credit to where bringing people together throughout California to better serve individuals with intellectual and developmental special needs. My role here today is to give you a very brief, and brief for me is always a challenge. See, they already know. I want to give you a snapshot of who we serve. Under the provisions of this great act, the Lanterman Developmental Disability Services Act, we serve currently individuals, over 280,000 individuals with intellectual and developmental special needs. Approximately 279,000 of these individuals receive services through the 21 regional centers that cover all 58 counties of California. The great state of California, in particular, has a unique program, nothing like it anywhere in the United States. And approximately 1,100 individuals receive services in our 4 state-operated residential facilities. Over 70%, and this is a key piece of information, of the individuals we serve live in their natural homes with family members or others. That's a key part, and many individuals in California are not as sensitive and have the understanding that many individuals who are eligible under this act live in their natural home. Proposed in this 15-16 governor's budget provides resources necessary for the department to continue building community services, and you're going to hear more details about that in a few minutes. This includes the development of community housing, a critical issue relative to a good life, including home care models, and to serve individuals with challenging behaviors. As we have demonstrated in the closure of Agnew's Developmental Center and Lanterman Developmental Center just recently, this last December, we have seen many, many great outcomes as people move into the community. And we really are pleased that no one who left Lanterman ever moved to another developmental center. As part of the comprehensive planning that your predecessor saw in front of this committee, that was our hope that we would accomplish that. The government has been really significantly impacted at the national and the state level as it relates to an incredible program. Everything is in the name of the program, called Early Start. Those of us who were there arguing for a great service like this were disappointed when the program was reduced substantially. The good news is that the Early Start program has been restored, which provides extraordinary services for individuals that in many, 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 many circumstances causes them to move to a more improved life without having to be in programs of special education. It's pretty incredible what the outcomes have been. Also, the department, in conjunction with the California Department of Education, Department of Rehab, and Disability Rights and Developmental Services, has engaged in a competitive integrated employment program. We're well on our way. We will be coming back and report to you intermittently about the progress we're making in a very relatively short period of time to have access, better access, for all the citizens who are in this room and all of those listening. It's exciting that we have in California a system that needs lots and lots of support to maintain itself. And it's an exciting system that it covers all 58 counties in our state. I'm always impressed as I travel around that not everybody understands the comprehensive nature of this program and the promises under this great act, that an individual plan lasts for your entirety of your need for your life, in addition to special education and other support services. So again, we look forward to sharing information with you, and we're here to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Any questions for our director from the committee? Mr. Rogers, I'd ask you one. As we undertake today's conversations about how to support those served by the developmental centers and the issues around rates, what thoughts do you have for us to consider about how we might move forward these conversations and what you would see as a need during any implementation?
First and foremost, as you know, Health and Human Services Agency Secretary Diana Dooley established a developmental services task force, and I think you are going to be impressed with the recommendations that will be forthcoming from that task force. Many of them will be directed to the questions you just asked. It's paramount that we are thoughtful about it. There are a number of people in this audience today, professionals and family members, that themselves are included in working in this task force. We see, I'm very hopeful about it, and I think in the month to come, you're going to see some suggestions specifically relative to that.
Thanks. And then tell us, what is the timeline for the recommendations to come forward? And if there's someone in this room who would like to be able to provide input to that task force, how do they do that? This is your opportunity to make the shameless plug for how to contact the task force.
First and foremost, you can make direct suggestions to the Department of Developmental Services, to Health and Human Services Agency, and just mentioning the task force is the best connection you can make. You will be connected to information that is electronically available, if you have access, or a hard copy available of what happens next. We have subgroups, working groups working that are going to be bringing recommendations. I expect many of those will be before the May revision of the budget, as a normal tendency to look at issues that we might be able to respond to relative to planning and implementation, therefore. So we're excited about material outcome.
Thank you. And stick around. I'm sure we might have a few questions for you.
Sure.
Always great to see you. Thank you, sir. We're going to move into our next discussion, our panel on our state developmental centers. We have a number of panelists, and after our panelists have presented, it's an honor that my colleague, Assemblymember Dodd, is here, and he's going to give us a few brief remarks. But first, let's hear from our panel and give the committee a chance to ask questions to Finance and LAO. We have John Doyle and Dwayne LaFawn from the Department of Developmental Services, Dion Arner from AGP Partners, who in her role as former Assembly member is certainly very knowledgeable about the issues in our conversation. Great to see you again, Assembly Member Arner. And Tony Anderson, Executive Director of the ARC and Chair of the Lanterman Coalition. We'll hear from them primarily, and then we'll hear from Rashi Kersarwani from LAO's office, as well as our other reps from Finance. John Doyle and Dwayne LaFawn, if you would take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. John Doyle, Department of Developmental Services. The department, as Director Rogers said, is responsible for the operation of 3 developmental centers and 1 community services center. The agenda does an excellent job of pointing out the highlights to the developmental center budget, and in the interest of time, I'll run through some of the more pertinent points. Probably the most significant change that we have in the budget is the expansion of the Secure Treatment Center at Porterville Developmental Center. The issue there revolves around individuals who are incarcerated, typically in county jails. They've been adjudicated as incompetent to stand trial, and there's concern, and a legitimate concern in our opinion by the courts, that these individuals are being denied their constitutional right to due process. What the budget proposes is to expand the secure treatment area at Porterville by 32 beds. The intent is to move individuals from county incarceration into these beds. While this proposal makes some progress on the number of individuals that are in county jail, it does not address the entire wait list. There's a wait list of approximately 50 individuals, and this proposal will address a portion of that. The other significant component that we have in the developmental center budget is the continuation of the program improvement plans at Fairview and Porterville developmental centers. The budget proposes an increase of $12.2 million and approximately 180 positions for full-year costs needed to make sure that these plans are fully implemented and that we are in compliance with regulations for institutional living that are outlined by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So those are the, I think, the most significant changes to the budget. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And is Mr. LaFawn going to be adding anything at this time?
No, sir. Thank you.
Very good. We'll just go through the whole panel then, and then we'll take questions after. Assemblymember Aaroner.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm honored to be able to present. I thank you very much for inviting me. I've actually had the pleasure of sitting where you're sitting for 6 years, and as a staffer, many, many years beyond that. So I know how difficult this is and how challenging it can be. Because the amount of time is so limited, I want to get to my points. You know, there have been three kind of major historical points in my lifetime, meaning in my political lifetime, in regards to the developmentally disability community. The first was the creation of the Lanterman Act. That actually happened before I was here, believe it or not, because I've been here a long time. And at that time, there were 13,000 people in state developmental centers with a waiting list of 3,000 people. Okay. Community members came together, met with Mr. Lanterman and other colleagues former colleagues of yours, and the Lanterman Act came out in 1969. And since that time, we have seen the closure of 4 facilities, all right, because the need for those facilities, as we created the 21 regional centers, the need for those facilities obviously was reduced significantly. The second major, for me, major historical point was the Kofelt suit. This was in 1993, right, when a father sued the state of California on behalf of his child because he wanted his child to be able to live in the community like everybody else. And interestingly enough, right, we settled. In other words, we did not go to court on this. And $350 million was put aside, and the Community Placement Plan Fund, whatever you want to call it, was created with that $350 million. And within 2.5 years, 2,300 consumers were moved from the state institutions into the community. All right, a remarkable statement, to say the least. The third historical point is the Olmstead decision, the Supreme Court decision that says that everybody gets to live in the community that wants to live in the community, no matter if they have a disability or not. Okay, given that, today you have approximately 1,031, I think, people, right, living in our state institutions today. Part of them, with the budget projections, 200 of them will be forensic holds, right, as has just been mentioned here at Porterville. So you're down to maybe 750 people in three institutions that are costing us $500 million, which, if you figure it out, is a little less than $500,000 per person, right? This is the issue before you today, and what this panel is about from my perspective is, what are we going to do with those 3 institutions, of which one of them, Sonoma, has 4 units that have been decertified, and you and I are spending our state general fund dollars on 110 people because we are not getting federal participation, and there's a very good chance that the rest of those units are going to be decertified shortly by the federal government, all right, because they are substandard. They don't meet the standards any longer of how we take care of people with intellectual disabilities. So the challenge is what do you want to do? And it seems to me the time has come for us to have a real discussion about the closure of the 3 facilities. That's my time, everybody. You're talking about a lot of money being spent on very few individuals, all of whom have a double, a triple, a gazillion other people in the community who look just like them, who act just like them, who have the same issues just like them, and are being taken care of in the community. And so I'd like to make kind of like 3 points here, right? You need to put some money into the community, into the CPP. So the savings you would get from closing the 4 units could go into the CPP fund to start developing and following the plans that have already been drawn up for everybody, right? You already gave them requirements 2 years ago and last year that IPP should be done on each person to show how and what their needs are for how can they move out into the community. So you want to take out those savings, put them into the fund so that you can start doing something, all right, to be sure that those 110 people come into the community with the funds that they need. I'd like to suggest that you might want to put language in the budget that says that within the next 2 years, because if you do the 110, you're now down to 640, okay, with the same expenditures going out. You can't afford this any longer. at the same time that the community system has been starved, right, during the recession. And so you might want to put language in that calls for the closure of the facilities, except for the people behind the fence at Porterville. I get that. Okay, but you might want to call for the closure of the other facilities within a 2-year period or no later than December 31 of 2017 to give the department the time that they need, right, to be sure that all of those plans that they've already developed can be implemented, all right? You would seem to me, you would look at those plans and you would say to yourself, okay, we know that 325 people need this and 40 people need that and 20 people need that. Give direction to the regional centers to say, all right, now that we've mapped out what we need, why wouldn't we start developing it using the savings as we move people out? Because we can't continue to do this. First of all, it's not fair to the consumers that are in those facilities not to have the benefit of living in the community. If you've ever gone and met with people who have come out, and you've heard parents, we've heard parents following Santi's conversation regarding coming out of Agnew's, it was unbelievable. There is not a parent today that comes in front of you from Agnew's who doesn't say, why didn't I do this sooner for my family member? That has been their remarks all along. And it's remarks of other people who have other family members when they bring their family member out from the institution, what I call into the sunshine. It's time to do it. We have done this, we've been there doing this long enough, and it's kind of like, my Weight Watchers teachers, I've been using this quote for a long time, everybody. Right, if you want to continue, if you think what's happening right now is so terrific, continue doing what you're doing. But if you think that you need a change, then make a change. The time is now to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And Tony Anderson, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I was asked to talk about some of the success stories. And so what I did was I asked all my network real quickly last night, if you can give me a story or two. And believe it or not, my inbox was inundated. I was flooded with all of these stories, these amazing stories that I've made copies for you. There are pictures of the people and their stories so that you can see. It would take me, of course, a couple hours, and I know that I don't have that kind of time. I won't even push for it. I got it. But if I did, it would be worth it, and it would move every one of you, and you would really, really appreciate what is involved. As it turns out, since so many people responded, I heard this week a phrase that I really caught on to me, and it was somebody. Everybody knows somebody. It's a new phrase I'm catching on with, and that's what happened. That's what I learned. Everybody in our community knows somebody who's moved out of the developmental centers successfully. Not that everything was easy. There are definitely challenges. Everybody has challenges in their lives, but they did it. And what I want to do is quickly, as fast as I can, is give you some highlights of a couple of the stories that I have for you. But, feel free to ask me more questions about the other stories so that I can have more time later. So first of all, Richard. Richard moved from Agnes Developmental Center and to a home in Castro Valley. And he's supported by Alegria Community Living in Oakland. And so he was 78 years old when he moved out. So the staff helping him learned quickly that Richard loves music, and in particular pianos and keyboards. And when they met him there at the developmental center, he was very angry, very upset, very sad. And they found out that the reason was simple. There weren't any keys, right, in the keyboard. So but he was by it, and he wanted to do it. So that stuck with him, right? And they never forgot that this was something that really moves him. So he now has 3 pianos, and he learned how to play piano. He took lessons in the community, and now he plays with 2 hands and not just 1 finger. And if you want, in your district, you could go and see him in a recital coming up, and he's joining the other students that are learning how to play. He's really connected to his family, and while he was in the developmental center, there was some problems of doing that, but since then, he's really connected. And his brother, he and his brother talked on the phone and met regularly, actually every week they made contact after he moved out. And that really helped along with the transition program, for the process for him. When his brother was too sick and he was too sick to go to see each other, they did Skype. They taught him how to do Skype, and this is a guy was in a developmental center. And now all of a sudden, he's doing Skype. And I know a lot of my friends that can't do Skype, and I won't call them out, but it's a thing. So anyway, he talked to his brother every week after that. And so he continued that relationship going. The staff say that he's an incredible person. He lightens their life, and he's learning new things because he's experiencing new things every day in the community that he didn't before. So, and that's Richard, just one quick example of Richard. And then I wanted to also tell you about Joaquin. Now, this is a long story, so you're not messing around, are you? So, Joaquin lived at Fairview Developmental Center and that was a couple hours away from where he grew up in San Diego. He grew up in rural San Diego, and then he moved out, and he moved back to San Diego in a rural town called Jamul. Is that what's that called? Amul. Okay, there we go. It's a town. It really is in San Diego, and that's where he moved. Yes, yeah. That's right. That's why I looked. I knew you know how to say it. It's a great town. Then you should move there. Everybody should move there now. So he moved out into a rural area, even from there, and 'cause he's got some issues that make it a little challenging. His house is now Joaquin-proof, so meaning that there are some things that broke on a regular basis. I mean, they didn't accidentally just out of nowhere break. He had issues. So they were able to make it so his environment so that he wouldn't break things as much, and that he'd be safer in there. So, and that comes from listening and being careful with what he's saying, and of course him training people and shaping our behavior as staff, right? Because that's how that happens. But they really listened well, designed a life for him that he was saying that he wanted. And, it's not that this is easy. This is not simple for Joaquin, but that we have successes every day for Joaquin, and we have successes every day for other people who the system has said at one point that this person is too dangerous to be around others or to care for themselves, and that they can't be in society. So somebody made a mistake along the way in that person's life. And so now we've got people who are very dedicated staff, and they are helping and listening and helping shape these worlds for people. Now, Joaquin, one of the things I think I want to end with this is that when he was moving out, this is kind of important. When he was moving out, his mother always said, during that process, because it took a long time, probably longer than it should have. But when he was moving out, his mother had promised him that we would have a steak dinner as a homecoming gift, as a reward, as making it through and getting your own house. And then, so he did move out, and he had that steak dinner. But now today, if you ask Joaquin about how he's feeling when he's having a good day, he'll tell you that he likes steak. And that means to everybody around him that he's having a good day, and he's appreciating the things in life around him. And that's the kind of life that we're talking about, a life that's rich, full of the things that you want to do, and that you find different ways of making that happen. He works as best he can. He goes to the beach in San Diego, helps clean up those San Diego beaches, and then around his neighborhood he picks up leaves and debris as well, so he can contribute and be helpful in his local community as well. So he's an active participant of his community, and his neighbors stop in and they see him, they talk with him, and remember, this was someone they said he couldn't be around other people. It turns out he's a contributing citizen, and again, we're working every day, the staff's working every day to make that work. Now, you gave me a 30-second, and did you ever give me I'm done? Yeah, you probably did. So like I said, I have incredible stories in here. Read them tonight when you go to bed, and I won't tell anybody, but you could tell me if you cried, because they will inspire you, and they will make you cry. They're very important stories. So.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for introducing us to Richard and Joaquin, and I have a lot in common, I think, with Joaquin, because when I have steak, I have a good day too, and. Truly, thank you for introducing us to two really great stories. We look forward to hearing more. So let me ask at this time if we have anything. Ms. Krishnawani, do you have anything from the LAO's office?
Yes,
Take
thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Rashi Kasarwani with the Legislative Analyst's Office. I'll begin my remarks on our office's recommendation to close Fairview and Sonoma developmental centers, and then I'll touch on two other recommendations that we have for the developmental centers system. Our office has had a long-standing view that the developmental centers should be downsized and that individuals with developmental disabilities should have an opportunity to live in community settings. Both state and federal policy dictate that individuals with developmental disabilities should receive care in the most integrated setting appropriate to meet their needs. On a fiscal basis, we find that providing services and supports to former DC residents in community settings is cost-effective. In our analysis of this issue, we found that the total cost to provide care to an individual in a developmental center is upwards of $500,000 annually. In contrast, the total cost to provide care to former Lanterman DC residents in the community ranges from $75,000 to $300,000 annually, depending on the type of care that's provided. As you can see, in all cases, the cost to provide care to a former Lanterman DC resident in the community is significantly less than it would be in a developmental center. Further, as my colleagues on the panel have noted, the state's experience in closing Agnews and Lanterman developmental centers shows us that DC residents can live successfully in the community. We therefore come to the conclusion that on both a policy and fiscal basis, the department should close Fairview and Sonoma developmental centers within 10 years. We think 10 years is an appropriate amount of time to ensure that the department and regional centers can develop community resources and conduct appropriate transition planning before seeking to transition consumers who likely have challenging medical or behavioral needs. We want to stress that closure of Fairview and Sonoma developmental centers should be done with the utmost care in order to ensure the health and safety of existing DC residents. And we would defer to the department's judgment as to which DC should be closed first. Our office has two other recommendations related to the developmental center system. So briefly, we recommend that the legislature approve the governor's budget proposal to expand capacity by 32 beds within the secure treatment program of Porterville Developmental Center. This would enable the department to provide competency training to individuals deemed incompetent to stand trial. Second, we recommend that the legislature approve the governor's proposal to implement what are known as program improvement plans at Fairview and Porterville developmental centers. This funding will enable the DCs to hire additional staff and provide staff training in order to meet federal certification requirements that are tied to federal Medicaid funding. Thank you. I'm happy to go into any further detail on any of these issues.